If you've been thinking about trying your hand at knitting cables, this project is a great place to start. But if you're still on the fence, don't be intimidated. The basic cable in this project consists of a super simple repeat that only involves one round where you knit the stitches out of order. That's really all there is to knitting cables. The step-by-step tutorial is coming up. First things first, I'm recommending Red Heart Amour because it's velvety soft and it has a really nice selection of colors to choose from. You'll also need a US 7 16-inch circular needle, a cable needle, and 2 stitch markers in different colors. Get yourself a nice long tail since we'll be using the long tail cast on for this one, and gather it up in your hands like this. Be sure to hold the yarn on the needle with your index finger so it doesn't fall off while you swing the needle down, grab the loop on your thumb, then swing it up and around to grab the loop on your finger. Then drop that thumb loop over the tip. Now this pattern is available in 8 different sizes from 0 to 3 months all the way up to men's, and the number of cast-on stitches and the various steps throughout the tutorial are different for each size. So you'll need to have the pattern in front of you as you follow along. You can view it for free on my website, or if you prefer to have a copy in hand to print or save for later, you can buy the PDF from my shop. I'll have a link to both of those options in the description below, so you can do what works best for you. When you have all the stitches cast on, lay your work out on a flat surface like this and make sure the braid is along the inside and that it's not twisted anywhere. First, grab your stitch marker and place that on the needle in your dominant hand, the side where the working yarn and the tail are coming from, and knit the first stitch. That'll join the two ends together so we can continue working in rounds. Then knit the next stitch. This time, pull the yarn in front and purl the next 2 stitches. Then pull the yarn to the back again and knit the next 2 stitches. So that's the repeat. Knit 2, purl 2 for the band of this hat. When you reach the last 2 stitches, if you've done everything correctly, they should be purls. Alright, now pass the marker over and knit the first 2 stitches to kick off the second round. And then purl the next 2. So once again, our repeat hasn't changed for this round. You'll continue to knit 2 and purl 2 throughout the band of this hat. Now the total number of rounds you'll work this repeat is dependent on the size you're making, so refer to the pattern for that information. Now chances are you'll have to put your work down at some point, or you might get interrupted as you're working this knit 2, purl 2 repeat, and you'll need to know what a knit and purl look like to keep going. So if you're newer to knitting, just always keep in mind that when you're seeing a bar or like a strand of yarn that's directly below the needle, that's always a purl stitch. Or when you see a V under the needle, that's a knit stitch. So that's a nice little refresher if you're sort of new to knitting. And just keep going with that knit 2, purl 2 repeat for the number of rounds provided in the pattern for the size you're making. When you finish that up, it'll look something like this. Next up, we'll work on the hat sides and get to those cables soon. The first 7 rounds are really straightforward. You'll knit 6. Later on, those knits will be a part of the twist, and the purls act as a background so the cables really pop out. And purl 2. This is going to be the basis and the foundation for our cable twists, but we're not actually cabling just yet. Now, one little tip here, if you think you'll have trouble keeping track of these 7 rounds, which I personally always do, and it's a little harder to count back when you do have those twists, I like to add a stitch marker of another color to help me remember where I started. So I'm always going to mark the first round, and then that way I can count back from there to know that I'm on the right track. All right, so keep going with that repeat for this round. Knit 6 and purl 2. When you get to the end of the round, again, you should end with 2 purls. And we'll jump right into the next round. Once again, the repeat is knit 6 and purl 2. We're not changing anything here. We need to have 7 rounds of knit 6 and purl 2, and that's going to be the same no matter which size you're working on. And here's what it'll look like when you get that finished. I count 7 rounds from my stitch marker, and we're ready for the cable round. So grab your cable needle and slide the first 3 stitches onto it. And make sure you're holding it to the front of the work. Then simply knit the next 3 stitches. Now here's the basis for the cable. We're working these out of order, right? We knit the last 3 first, and we're going to knit the first 3 last. That's going to give it the twist. So to do that, you'll need to knit the stitches on the cable needle, and there's a couple different ways of doing that, and I'll show you both. The first way I'll show you is to knit them right off the cable needle. This is typically what I do myself because it saves an extra step. Just make sure your stitches aren't going to fall off the back needle, and slide the stitches from the cable needle down so they're in a workable position and knit them. So that completes our cable. That is the only thing to knitting cables. We've got a really simple repeat, and we have a row where we knit things out of order. We always want to follow up one of these cables, these twists, with our 2 purl stitches, so we're keeping those backgrounds and we're kind of giving it some contrast so they pop out. Now for this next cable, I'll show you another way that you can work these stitches out of order. First up though, you'll need to slide the first 3 onto your cable needle. And knit the next 3 stitches. So this way of knitting them will be to slide them back onto your regular needle. Then go ahead and knit them. And of course, you finished a twist, so you'll purl the next two. So this one cable round is what creates the twist, working those 6 stitches out of order. So as you progress through this round, you'll notice the stitches getting tighter and not really stretching around the circulars. It gets a little uncomfortable and it makes you feel like something's going wrong. But this is completely normal and it will get better as you work the next few rounds after the twist. So the closer your work is to the twist, the closer the twist is to your needles and your cord, the harder it's going to be to knit them because everything is stretched. We've twisted them out of order and we've put a lot of strain on that. But as we continue to knit and get further away from that twist, it'll ease up and be easier to knit again. Oh, I also want to mention here, this is just one type of cable needle, but honestly, any variety will work. Just be mindful of how thick it is. The closer the thickness to your needles, the better. Like before, your last 2 stitches should be purls and you've made it through the hardest part. Now that you have the most difficult part out of the way, you're ready to jump into your super simple repeat. You'll knit 6 and purl 2, and you'll do that for 7 rounds. So here's the general way that this pattern works. You'll knit 6, purl 2 for 7 rounds, and then you'll follow that up with your twist round and repeat. Now, as you would probably guess, the number of times you repeat this is completely dependent on the size you're making. So again, you'll want to refer to the written instructions in order to figure out how many times you need to repeat this for this side of your hat. And when you get it finished, it'll look something like this. Now make sure you've worked through round 7 of that repeat to set yourself up for the crown decreases. We'll work these decreases within the cables themselves so it looks neater, and honestly the cool thing about working a decrease in this way is that the crown decreases are the same for every single size because of it. So we're picking up on the first round of our crown, and what you'll do is slide the first stitches on the cable needle, and rather than knit the next 3 like you would to create a normal cable, instead you'll knit the first stitch and then knit 2 together for a decrease. So we've decreased by 1 stitch on one half of the cable, so we need to do the same thing on the other. But we need a different decrease so that it goes in a different direction, and for that we'll work the slip, slip, knit. So you'll slip the first 2 stitches over and knit them through the back. Then you'll knit the next stitch. That finishes up the cable, and you'll purl the next 2. And repeat. Pass the first 3 over, knit the next, then knit 2 together, and from the cable needle, slip, slip, knit, and knit the last. Followed by your 2 purls. So that's the repeat for this round. You'll decrease by 2 stitches per cable, but keep in mind you can find the total stitch counts for each size in the pattern. When you're finished with that round, it'll look something like this, and things are probably getting a little tight on your circulars, especially if you're making one of the baby sizes. When you can't comfortably knit anymore, you'll need to transfer the work to either double pointed needles or a longer circular so you can work the magic loop method. Now, I tend to prefer working magic loop. I think it's a little easier than DPNs, especially for newer knitters. So that's what I'll demonstrate here, but just in case you prefer DPNs and you need to see how that's done, how you would transfer it over, I'll also include a link to another video on how you can transfer your hat stitches to double pointed needles. The first thing you want to do is hook your stitch marker on the first stitch so it stays in place, and switching to the magic loop, honestly, is as simple as continuing with your pattern on your new set of needles. Now remember, our stitch pattern for this round is similar, but we decreased, so we have fewer stitches within our cables, so that changes things a little bit. So rather than knit 6 and purl 2, remember we've decreased by 2 in our cables, so we'll knit 4, then purl 2. So you're knitting 4, purling 2 off the smaller circular and onto the longer pair. Once again, I'm using that orange stitch marker to help me keep track of the knit 4, purl 2, that round repeat, so I know how many times I've created this round. When you have all of the hat stitches on your longer circular needle, you'll pull the needle out so it's a little more centered. And separate it roughly in half, pulling the extra cord through. If you can, try to make sure to pull the cord out after 2 purls. So you're completing a purl on one needle. This will make things a lot easier later on. Now, I didn't do this at first, but I did go back and fix it later because it's just so much easier to start with a knit if all possible. So the front needle here will always be the one you knit your stitches off of, and the back, you'll pull it out, and that's the one you'll knit with. Now, as we progress through our crown, rather than make 7 rounds in our knit purl repeat like we've been doing, since the cable is smaller now, consisting of only 4 stitches, we don't need to knit as many rounds, because if we do, the cables look a little off. So instead of knitting 7 rounds, this time you'll knit only 5. Now we already knit one of those rounds when we transferred over to the new needles, so we just need 4 more rounds with knit 4, purl 2, repeat. Remember, you can find these exact steps in the pattern. I just want to make sure you see the techniques and you get the general idea here. Alright, when you knit all the stitches from that needle, pull the cord through, flip it over, and slide the stitches on that front needle. Then pull the back needle through and keep going with your stitch pattern. So when you get to the end of that round, pull the cord through again, flip it, and slide the stitches on the front needle and continue knitting with the back needle. By the way, if you need a little more help with magic loop knitting, I'll include a link to a more beginner-friendly tutorial in the description below. From here, you'll keep going with the repeat until you reach the next cable twist round. Okay, at this point you should have 5 rounds after that last twist, and we're ready to decrease and twist again. Now remember, our cable now only has 4 stitches, so instead of slipping the first 3, you're going to slip the first 2. Then knit the next 2 together. Then from the cable needle, slip, slip, knit. So the decreases aren't changing here, just the number of stitches since the cable is smaller. Now follow that up with 2 purls. And repeat. And with this, we're decreasing the size of the cable yet again. Now that we're done with the twist round, we need to work a few simple rounds here. Since our cable is smaller, our repeat changes a bit. This time you'll knit 2 and purl 2, and you'll work that for 4 rounds total. And when you get that finished, it'll look something like this, and we're almost finished. We need to decrease just a bit more, but this time we'll decrease in the purl stitches. We're actually not cable twisting anymore. So get yourself set up to work and knit the first 2 stitches. Then purl the next 2 together. So pull the yarn forward, insert the needle through the next 2 purls, and purl them together as if they were one. Then keep going with that repeat. Knit 2, purl 2 together. By the way, if you want to keep track of your stitch counts whenever you decrease, you'll find those spelled out for each decreasing round in the instructions. Alright, our last round is a decreasing round as well, but this time we'll decrease within the knits. So knit the first 2 together and purl the next stitch. And repeat. Knit 2 together, purl 1. When you're finished with that round, your hat will look something like this, and we're ready to close up the opening. So trim the working yarn, leaving a nice long tail, and thread that tail on a yarn needle. You can also remove any markers that might still be there. You won't need those anymore. And insert the needle knitwise, starting with the first stitch and sliding it off. And do this for all of the stitches. When you get to the point that you've worked all of them off the first needle, you'll need to slide it all through so you can keep going in order. When all stitches are secure on the tail, pull it to draw it up, and run the needle around the opening several times to secure that opening. And it's always a good idea to flip it inside out and do the same thing on the inside so it's nice and secure. Then all that's left is to weave in the ends. That's all for now, friend. I hope you have a great time knitting your cable hats, and I want to let you know how much I appreciate you watching and sticking with me here until the end of the video. If you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so if you're into this sort of thing. I make crochet and knitting tutorials like this all the time, and I'd love to keep inspiring you to make something that'll make you happy. When you subscribe or like or leave a comment on any of my videos, that really helps the channel, and it's a tremendous help for me to keep doing what I'm doing. Now don't forget the links to buy the PDF or view the pattern for free on my website or in the description below. Happy knitting, and I'll see you in the next one.